In this video, you will learn how to make delicious sourdough bread using 50% whole wheat flour and 50% white flour. Hi, I'm Ron, and thanks for clicking on this video. Home baking is my hobby and sourdough bread is my passion. During the next few minutes, I will share with you my method for making and baking sourdough bread that has the distinct tang of sourdough along with the addictive flavor of whole wheat bread. The complete recipe and directions will be listed in the description below. And finally, if you enjoy this video, please click the like hand just below the video, leave a comment on youtube.com, as well as click the subscribe button and notification bell. Okay then, let's begin. One of the first things I do in the morning is feed my starter. There's about 50 grams of mature starter in this wide mouth jar, and since my 2-loaf recipe calls for 200 grams of sourdough starter, I will add to the jar 100 grams of water and 100 grams of flour. The flour I use to feed my starter consists of 1/3 rye flour, 1/3 whole wheat flour, and 1/3 all-purpose flour. I keep my all-purpose flour in the containers with red lids and my bread flour in containers with blue lids. The starter will sit in this proofing box until it has doubled in volume, which will take about 3 or 4 hours. Normally, I would wait until my sourdough starter has doubled in volume and then mix the starter, flour, water, and salt. But today, because I'm using whole wheat, I'm going to Autolyse the whole wheat flour. At the same time, I fed my starter. Autolyse is mixing just the flour and water. I've been asked why I don't use the Danish dough whisk to stir my dough. Well, I do own a couple of them and I have used them, but I just prefer using the handle of a wooden spoon. It's been 2 hours since I fed my starter and mixed 450 grams of whole wheat flour with water. It's time to add the other half of flour and water. It's been about 4 hours since I fed my starter. It has doubled in volume and it's time to add the starter and salt to the dough. After removing 200 grams of sourdough starter, the jar with about 50 grams of starter remaining will once again sit on the kitchen counter waiting for the next feeding for bread making. Off camera, I have performed 2 stretch and folds and 2 coil folds at 30-minute intervals. I do have a video you can watch on my YouTube channel which demonstrates folding, or you can simply type stretch and fold or coil fold in the youtube.com search bar. After folding and resting, the dough is ready to be pre-shaped, shaped, and put in the fridge overnight. This is a 2-loaf recipe, and it's really not necessary to weigh each portion of dough. I do it here simply to ensure they are close to the same size. I'll let the dough rest for 5 or 10 minutes before final shaping. While the dough is resting, I'll dust the bannetons with flour. I use the least amount of flour I can and still prevent the dough from sticking. Now for final shaping, cover the dough and into the fridge overnight. It's the following day and time to bake the dough. I've taken the dough from the fridge a few minutes ago, removed the cover. Now I'm loosening the edge of the dough from the banneton. The Dutch ovens have been preheating in the oven at 450 degrees for about an hour. This one looks like it's a little stubborn. There it goes. Okay, I'm going to make one slash mark clear across the top, holding the razor blade at about a 45-degree angle. There. Here's another view. I guess I should have had the camera on the other side, but you get the idea. Okay. Let's get some gloves on and get the Dutch ovens out of the oven. When handling Dutch ovens, I encourage you to wear gloves, not use a towel or a pot holder of some kind. With my bread sling, the dough fits easily into the Dutch oven. And back into the kitchen oven. One more to go. Here's the close-up. Handy dandy bread sling. And this one came right off, no sticking. I'll use a little different design. Here I'm going to do 3 triangles, or a triangle, 3 lines. Again, holding the razor blade at a 45-degree angle. That looks good. Get the gloves back on. Pick up the bread sling, dough in the hot oven, and back in the oven. It's 450 degrees. I'll set the timer for 30 minutes. While the bread is baking, I'd like to discuss my Lodge 5-quart Dutch ovens and why I use them like I do. A few weeks ago, I posted this picture on Facebook along with some pictures of sourdough bread. Several people posted that I was doing it wrong, stating the lid should be on the bottom when baking bread. Here's a wider view of the same 2 Dutch ovens. My stove has 2 ovens. The top oven is too narrow for my Dutch oven, so I have to use the bottom oven for baking my sourdough bread. I find it easier and safer to handle the Dutch ovens with the lid on top. Here's a view showing the lid on the bottom. The pot portion of the Dutch oven is considerably heavier than the lid, resulting in the Dutch oven being somewhat top-heavy and relatively unstable compared to when the lid is on top. Of course, either way will bake the bread just fine. I simply prefer the lid on top. It's been 30 minutes. Time to check on the bread. Get my gloves on. And this is one of the most fun parts, taking that lid off. Oh, that bread is so beautiful. Look at that. Okay, back into the oven at a reduced temperature of 400 degrees for about 10 to 15 minutes. Long enough to bring the temperature in the internal temperature of the bread above 200 degrees. Let's check on the other Dutch oven. Oh, that bread is beautiful. Okay, back into the oven. For another 10 to 15 minutes. The bread is done. Let's get it out of the oven and check the internal temperature. Oh my, isn't that beautiful? Anything over 200 degrees is what we're after. And that one is, and this one is also perfect. I usually don't slice my bread because I give them away to neighbors, but today is an exception. I want to taste this bread. Oh my. Oh my. This bread is so delicious. I've got to get some butter. Here's my Pioneer Woman butter dish. Well, I'm not going to expect you to sit here and watch me eat bread. But this bread is so good, I just can't describe how delicious it is. Sourdough tang and whole wheat flavor. Thanks so much for watching, and make it a great day.